California lawmakers are taking steps after charges of widespread sexual harassment at the state capitol. A consulting firm's been hired to review policies relating to sexual assault. An independent investigator has been hired to look into claims of sexual harassment. The new reports of harassment in the Capitol follow widespread allegations of assault by Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. Lawmakers say they plan to introduce legislation to combat a culture of harassment when the state legislature reconvenes in January. Actor Tom Hanks is now speaking out about accusations against Harvey Weinstein, saying there were plenty of people in Hollywood who knew exactly what was going on. This follows yesterday's accusations from another woman who says Weinstein forced himself on her at his New York City apartment. Weinstein is currently in Arizona to continue working with doctors after completing a week-long sex addiction rehab session. There are now more than 200 women sharing stories about being sexually harassed by filmmaker James Toback. That follows an article by the Los Angeles Times featuring the accusations of 38 women. They say he was involved in incidents that took place in hotel rooms, public parks, and movie trailers, among other locations. The 72-year-old director says he has no recollection of the accusers and denies the claims. On October 15th, Alyssa Milano, an actress, revived a movement on Twitter with the hashtag #MeToo, encouraging women who'd been sexually assaulted or harassed to tweet "Me Too" as a status. Milano says that would give people a sense of the magnitude of the problem. Since then, that hashtag #MeToo has reached 85 countries and has been tweeted some 1.7 million times. Joining me now to talk more about this, Sarai Crain-Pope of Bay Area Women Against Rape. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I was reading the #MeToo stories on Twitter. So many of them have so many similarities. The woman is typically young, the person on the other side is typically older and in a status of power, either in the workplace or in the relationship.
Power is a huge dynamic in sexual violence because really sexual violence is an issue of power. It's violence. And I think one of the advantages of us having these conversations is now we can expose, the root of a lot of these really abusive, violent behaviors that oftentimes go unnoticed, minimized, or just reduced to just boys being boys.
Well, and a lot of women are being faced with, why did you wait so long to tweet out your story or to tell me about it? Can you answer why they have had to wait so long?
Absolutely. I think the very simple answer to that question really has to do with shame. I also think that oftentimes women aren't even aware, and I would say women and men, so I mean there's victims on both sides, but they're not even aware of the magnitude of the trauma, of the psychological impact of what has actually happened to them and that they have actually been victimized. 85% conservatively of individuals that are sexually violated are violated by someone they know and someone they trust. And so when you're in relationship and interacting with someone you know and trust, you're not really believing that what's happening is actually happening.
And that moment of suspension, of disbelief, of did he really ask me to do this, or did she really just say that to me? So many of the people I'm reading about say, I wish I had said something right when it happened and just killed it then.
Yeah.
Can I lean on you to perhaps give us a phrase or something to tuck in the back of our minds when we do sense that things are going way off course?
Well, I think that the question, at the root of the question, there's a lot of this, the burden of the responsibility around sexual violence being on the victim instead of the perpetrator. The only person who can, prevent sexual assault is the perpetrator. When an individual has been victimized or traumatized, they're just in shock and they don't understand the full measure of what has happened to them. And so, Garcia, I feel like with this conversation that we're having around some of the individuals that it's taken them a year, 2 years, sometimes 2 decades to come forward, it's just taken that long to digest the magnitude and to have the courage, the conviction, and the permission to speak out about it.
If something like this happens, let's say in the workplace, a lot of women have been writing they were afraid to go to HR because they thought that HR would protect the aggressor.
That's right.
Tell me more about that delicate dynamic.
It is a very delicate dynamic because oftentimes when sexual harassment happens on the workplace, like we see in the Weinstein situation, these interactions are directly related to your success or your ability or to earn money. And so it's just a really difficult, muddy, complicated terrain to navigate. I would say on just a generic HR level, document everything. Document when you have spoken out. Document when you, have checked in with an HR professional. You've looked at whistleblower policies. You should be protected, but unfortunately, so many people are not protected by the policies that they see in black and white. But they need to continue to speak out and to not be afraid to hold accountable the people in power that are abusing them.
I'm seeing some men speaking out on Twitter saying, I did this in my past. I laughed at this kind of a joke.
Yes.
I high-fived a buddy when he did this sort of offensive behavior, and I'm not going to do that anymore. Where's the responsibility for men?
The responsibility is great for men, and I think that individuals who are taking accountability and taking responsibility and acknowledging culpability in sexually violent behaviors and attitudes is such a huge gift to everyone. You always hear folks say, well, how do you prevent sexual assault? Well, go out with your friends and go 2 by 2 and don't drink a whole lot. Really, we need to be teaching rapists not to rape. We need to be teaching young men and young women to be respectful of people's bodies, to be respectful of their voices. And so men have a huge potential and opportunity to help take a stand and reduce the violence that we're seeing. It's huge.
Back to the Weinstein cases specifically, a lot of the actresses said when they had their meetings with him, they were very young. They were perhaps being looked at for very sexually alluring roles. They were going to play a gorgeous woman on the screen.
Right.
They had a hard time answering the question of, can I still be sexy? Can I play a sexy role? And that's not asking for it.
Right. It's not asking for it. It's flattering when someone in power, when someone famous affirms your beauty, when you make it. I mean, the Hollywood hustle is a big hustle. And so when you actually get in the door, you're willing to do whatever it takes to protect that. However, the people in power are also exploiting that. And so we want, to empower all individuals that have been impacted by sexual violence to, give themselves permission, take themselves off the hook. They may have made a different decision at 40 than they would at 21. We have hindsight, it's 2020. But when you're young, when you haven't given yourself permission to stand out against those kinds of intolerable behaviors, that's what happens.
Your organization, Bay Area Women Against Rape, has been doing this work for a very, very long time. Do you think that we're at a watershed moment here? Will actual change happen?
Those of us who are in the movement, we would say yes, and we're not surprised. The question has been posed to me several times that is this an increase? It's like, no, this has always been happening. It's just now folks are feeling the freedom and the liberation to actually speak out about it. So I think that now that it's being exposed from the top down, I mean, we're seeing the tolerance of sexual violence from the top down, coming out of Washington, D.C. And so now that it's being exposed, I think the opportunity is greater for us to really be outraged about it and do something about it.
Talk about strength in numbers. All right, Sarai Crain-Pope of Bay Area Women Against Rape, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, we'll be right back.